Hello and welcome to Furious Driving, and today you join me in a Volkswagen Phaeton. Now, I don't generally revisit cars I've driven previously, but sometimes a different variant of the same car is so different it's worth paying a few minutes of attention to, because honestly it's an entirely different car thanks to, well, really just the engine. So this is a Volkswagen Phaeton V10. Not a V10 petrol, a V10 diesel. This car harks back to the early noughties when diesel was still the wonder fuel. It wasn't viewed as dirty diesel that was horrible and hated. It was a popular thing that people liked. It was great for long distance driving. Now, although the big seller in the Phaeton range was the V6, this is the car we drove previously, and it actually makes rather a good daily driver, because although you get all the luxury and opulence of a 2.2 ton ultra luxury barge, you still get reasonable fuel economy out of the 3-litre V6, which became about 240 horsepower in the one that we drove in the later cars. There were arguably two flagships to the range though. Everyone talks about the W12 petrol. This is an immense engine. It's the one that came out of the Bentley. And of course it was shoehorned into this as well at great effort. But it's not the most reliable of engines in comparison with this. And boy is it thirsty. The V10 is arguably the better flagship. It's a flagship of the diesel range, and it may not have been the halo car, but it was the one to go for. So let's take a quick look around the car and see what else you've got, as well as more power and a delicious noise. So I'll pull over and give you a quick walk around the interior of the car in a second, but looking around at the moment it's largely the same apart from a few little upgrades. The infotainment is a little bit different. The seats and the seat belts are a little bit different. You wouldn't normally think a seat belt would be an area for improvement. However, on this particular car, this has got dual action retraction. So it extends from both the bottom and the top. So it almost feels like you're not wearing a seat belt, because as you move around in the seat, it moves with you top and bottom. Something I don't think I've ever experienced before. We still have all the niceties we had before. We have the 4-zone draftless air conditioning, which is absolutely incredible. We've got the Breitling clock, and I've got a couple of corrections to make on the previous video, which you can go and check out the full history of the car over there. I won't repeat all of that because there's a lot to go through. I'm just focusing on the V10 elements here. If you want to learn more about the Phaeton in general, then click the link above and learn all there is to know about it. I did make the mistake that I thought it had a Bentley logoed clock. In fact, it was a Breitling clock from a Bentley that had been added by the owner, and I thought the Phaeton got the chrome tipped stalks like in a Bentley. Again, they use the same components but de-chromed in the Phaeton and chromed in the Bentley, and the owner had also found that as well. So I'll quickly backtrack for a second, because this is a very interesting car individually. It belongs to the same father and son team who brought me the previous Phaeton, Callum and Nick, and they are instrumental in the Phaeton Owners UK Club, which is not a huge club because there aren't many of the cars, but it's a very active club in terms of saving these incredible beasts. Now, I'll preface this by saying that Phaetons aren't worth a huge amount of money. They are shockingly good value, it has to be said. A good V6 is probably £4,000, maybe £5,000. A good V10 like this, maybe £8,000 to £10,000. This car though was free. But there's no such thing as a free car. We all know this, don't we, really, in our heart of hearts. We might be excited by the free car. It's when you get home and start fixing it, then it gets expensive, and they've put quite a few £1,000s into making it work. The previous owner had been struggling with their Kessie system. If you watch Sam Crack, he had a kind of trouble with a Bentley convertible that was flood damaged, and it was exactly the same kind of problems. Turns out the owner of this car previously had been suffering with a leaky sunroof, and that had done in the Kessie system, which takes out the immobiliser, and also it had taken out a couple of other ECUs as well, so it's running on multiple problems. They then spent quite a long time, over a year in fact, going through all the electronic problems, making sure everything was sorted out, and then sorting out all the trim problems, including adding upgraded wood into the car. In fact, they went as far as buying a donor car in order to harvest parts from, discovering the donor car was better than this car and certainly too good to scrap, so fixing that car as well and selling that one on. And yeah, it was a long epic adventure, making this thing well, basically look like a perfect example of a V10 Phaeton that you see today. But getting the V10 into the car in the first place was a feat in itself. As we discussed in the previous video, this was one of Ferdinand Pirsch's little pet projects. He of the Audi V8, you know he likes a luxury white elephant. So the Volkswagen V10 was actually engineered in competition with the Audi 4-litre V8 because they didn't want to share their toys, basically. So the one big Volkswagen company, VAG Group, was building competing products. And although it shares the architecture with the A8, the A8 is aluminium, this is steel. So in the standard V6 version, it weighs about 2.2 tonnes. This, because that V10, which is basically 2.5 litre PD engines nailed together, weighs about 350 kilograms. This entire car weighs 2.5 tonnes. And so the chassis, the frame, is made of steel for stiffness and strength. But also, a lot of the suspension components, which in the lesser cars of the Phaeton range are made of aluminium, this again is made of steel, so it's heavier but stronger, which it has to be. Now, this particular car is wearing actual Bentley wheels, but the production car shipped with Bentley wheels an inch smaller, but with Volkswagen logos on. So it's part sharing an awful lot of the Bentley range of items. In keeping with the Audi V8 of days of yore, it also has weird brakes. This has Brembo, not 4, not 6, 8-pot calipers hiding behind there. But those big brakes, which are shared with the R8 and Lamborghinis, do feel like they lack a bit of bite, which is because they use the same smaller servo as the lesser cars. They will dig in and really stop you quickly if you're confident with them, but unless you really know the car, it does feel like you're not always going to stop as quickly as you'd like to. Honestly, the sound from this thing is immense. And there's such a wave of torque when you put your foot down, it just beggars belief. Incredibly, there is so much torque in this engine. 313 horsepower doesn't sound huge, but the 750 Newton meters of torque, this is tree stump pulling territory. It actually starts in second gear quite a lot of the time if you're not putting your foot down. In fact, they had to re-engineer a new version of the ZF gearbox in order to make it transmit the power through that Quattro-style four-wheel drive system without breaking itself. Now, all Phaetons use a dual battery setup, similar to what they use in Bentleys, in fact, but generally the main battery is for starting the car, the second one is like a leisure battery for running all the comfort systems in the car. This one, because it's such a effort to get the thing spinning, it actually has two full-size AGM batteries tucked away to give enough oomph to this system. Now, driving around, you do notice just how smooth and how comfortable it is. It's constantly adjustable, or adjusting air suspension under here. Alongside this wooden strip along the front, our parking sensors, our distance sensors, are actually tucked into the corners just here. Little green and red lights, so you don't even notice them until they're not there. The entire thing is designed to be one-handed effortless, and the steering is oh so light. And unless you're pressing on very hard, you don't really notice the extra several hundred kilograms of weight in the nose of the car. So the interior of the V10 is broadly the same, but you've got a few more extra little niceties in this one. And bear in mind, there were a lot of extra niceties before you even begin throwing extra ones in there. So this car's got the optional extra wood in the centre, and it looks fabulous. But the big differences are things like the seats, which have got a nicer grade of leather on them. This is the same design of seat, still very Volkswagen-y, still kind of flat and square, but quite ergonomic. But we've got these lovely perforations which blow hot and cold through them. We've got the 18-way seat adjustment. On the previous car we drove, the V6, this one was missing, so you couldn't twiddle your headrest around. This one you can, though. Ooh, exciting. So up, down, has it got left and right as well or something? How do you get 18 ways out of it? That's ridiculous. We've got memory seats, we've got memory steering wheel, And on this car, we also get an upgraded infotainment system, because on the lower level cars, we get the same parts bin thing you find in a Seat Leon or a base model Audi. In this one, we got a bespoke thing, not just a different screen with different buttons, different software as well, making the whole thing an awful lot nicer. And this is a really nice touch to this car. This version has got a TV tuner, and with a little bit of Chinese adaptation, you can even hook up your mobile phone to it, and so you can play mobile phone videos through the car. The TV tuner is of course analog on this old one, which means that you can't use current TV. With modern technology you can adapt it to keep it current. And look what's lurking in the armrest. So you can sit there in your car, in your driving seat, making corded handheld phone calls, because this is how we used to do things in the old days. This is though the only Nokia which will last longer than a 3310 for battery life, because it's got two massive 12-volt batteries in the boot. One thing I do want to quickly do is the horn test, because has this got the same train horn as the other one? Yes, still got a train horn parp in there, fantastic. Now what really strikes you as you move around the car and touch things is the way they've done the feedback and the feeling of the controls. So everything is very strongly damped to give a luxury feel. You turn the ignition key and it's sprung loaded rather than clicked. So there's no awful poor person clicking, it's just a lovely smooth action. So under the bonnet, and this incidentally is a special grille, this denotes the long wheelbase car, and it features the slimmest indicators found on a production car at the time. We find the thing that separates this from the V6 we drove before. This is the Volkswagen V10 TDI, and it is a monster of an engine, and it looks big just here, but you take off these plastic panels here and this plastic panel here, there's more engine. It just goes on and on and on. It is a ridiculous piece of packaging. Originally this engine did come with timing belts and chains and things, however that didn't fit. The engineers had to go back to Ferdinand Piëch and say, sorry, it doesn't work. So he had them engineer it so it's got this ridiculously intricate clockwork mechanism, engineer's nightmare of gear wheels that rotate and go around on the back of the engine to do the timing. Imagine taking this thing apart and then trying to remember where everything goes to put it back together again. It's a monster of an engine though, 313 horsepower, 750 Newton meters of torque, which works out at 553 foot-pound if you're dealing with old money. And it's basically a pair of 5-cylinder PD engines mashed together, and because of that it's got the old pulse douche mechanical fuel injection, so you can hear the mechanical injectors working. It gives it a lovely mechanical sound. Listen to this. If you like diesel noises, that is fantastic, but the thing is, when it's idle, you can really hear that kind of ticking sound from the centre of the engine. And to combat that, they've done loads of sound deadening. These bits of foam rubber here around the headlights, these help deaden it. There's more of this down beside the sides. There's carpeting in front of here, there's carpeting down here. There's also plastic rocker covers over the metal rocker covers to try and contain all of the noise, to really just pen this thing in. And what's also really impressive is the airstream that goes into this engine to I don't know what. I guess they've run out of room for air filters, because air filters are here in the bonnet. The air comes up through these grills at the back of the engine bay, through the filters, through the bonnet, and down again into the centre air intake. It's just so cleverly packaged that through necessity they were forced to do so much. Now you may remember the boot from the previous Phaeton we drove being quite an interesting way to get in. We'd push the little button on the top of the badge to open it. This one though is motorised, and it's a very, very clever motorised system. Look at these hinges. They are just immense and beautiful works of art. It's like a set piece from the movie Metropolis. There's a piston ram just here, but I think that's just for damping. There's a part there, there's a part there, there's a part there, there's a part there. All interacting cantilever. They were designed by the bicycle company Campagnolo, and it's ridiculously overcomplicated. They wanted it to be invisible to see and almost effortless to use. So the hydraulic system that makes all this work is hidden inside this area just here. You can retrofit it to other cars. It's a lot of work though. And in addition to that, the boot latch up here, you can't see it anymore because as the boot goes up and down, that retracts because only Neanderthals have visible boot latches. The boot itself is of course still massive, and you do still get a full-size spare wheel in there because it's a luxury car. You don't want your captains of industry stranded by the roadside. Now this was the most powerful diesel engine in the world when it was launched, for a production car, I hasten to add. This upset Audi, of course, and so they retaliated with the 4.2 TDI, which was more powerful in bhp but 100 less newton meters of torque. So I think we know who wins there. Unfortunately, because the extreme packaging made it very difficult to make everything fit, they had to leave out the DPF, which means it's only Euro 3. And so ultimately they had to cancel this engine long before the end of the production run of the car. They'd continued to use it in the Touareg, but then that's a bigger frame, so they could hide the DPF in there and keep it running a bit longer. Now the big drawback with the V10 is not, as you might imagine, economy. It's actually pretty good. It'll get around 30 plus mpg on a run and combined low 20s. And bear in mind the size, the weight, the complexity of this car, that's actually not that bad. No, the killer for this car is maintenance. Everything costs a fortune. Everything is hard. Almost every job on the engine, because it is so very tightly packed, is an engine out task. Fortunately, because it's gear driven by a giant clockwork mess, there are no timing belts or timing chains that need to be changed ever. I can't imagine the nightmare of taking that lot apart would be. But everything is complicated and everything is, well, over-engineered. Even things like changing a headlight bulb will cost you close to 4 figures because you can't get to it from behind because there's too much engine in the way. You have to take the bumper off. So you either have to be very, very hands-on or have very deep pockets to run this car. Now this particular car is a beautiful shade of nocturne aubergine red, which is rather lovely, it has to be said. And inside we've got this beautiful tan leather interior. Now neither of the two Phaetons I've reviewed have featured this, but you could option a 4-seat pack. So you've got 2 armchairs in the back with reclining, heated, cooled and massaged rear seats with an extended centre console. Regardless, this car does come with the dual zone rear air conditioning as standard. And if you were to dip into the options menu, you could have chosen adaptive cruise from launch, a solar sunroof to run the interior fans to keep the car cool on hot days, and screens in the rear headrest, and an Alpine DVD player changer hiding in the boot. Tell you what, this thing clings on quite nicely when you put your foot down. You can really feel that 4-wheel drive through the chassis when you put your foot down in a bend. It does start to feel a little bit nose heavy going around the corner. It's a little bit of squeak off the tyres. I just want to say a massive thank you to Nick and Callum for not only bringing this car down today to review, but also for fixing it and saving it from being broken for parts. It is such a lovely vehicle. If you want to learn more about the Phaeton story and the Phaeton family in general, hit the link for the previous video about the V6 and join me again next time driving something completely different.